Welcome to Disruption Now. I'm your host and moderator, Rob Richardson. With me is Larry Brinker with the Brinker Group, and he is responsible, I believe, for over $4 billion in construction projects. And we're going to get a chance to talk to him about his journey and how he's navigated having, obviously, a lot of success. But we really want to get to the heart of the lessons along the way, because we believe in the beauty of the struggle. We believe in the disruption. The disruption lies in the journey. It lies in the struggle. So, Larry, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah. So you are from Detroit, Michigan. Are you a Lions fan?
Yeah,
a weird question to start with, but go.
Yes, I'm going to laugh first. I was born and raised in Pontiac, Michigan, which ironically was the home of the Pontiac Silverdome for, many years, where the Lions played prior to moving to Detroit. With that being said, yes, I am a Pontiac, born and raised person, and currently my business is in Detroit. The Lions, I don't necessarily drink the Kool-Aid, but
so you're not a Lions fan. You don't claim them. You're not claiming them.
I don't claim them.
So who do you claim? Like, this is a very important question.
Oh, man.
Really.
See,
look, I stayed a Bengals fan even through the hard times. It is very, like, the Bengals and the Lions had a very similar history until recently. But so it's, So I understand how you feel, actually.
So what I would say with the Lions is the fact that, like, they're winning now, which is great. I love the grit. I love what they represent. It's just, years of weekly letdowns. You just have to let it go sometimes. So, I am slowly getting back onto the bandwagon, but overall, it's great for the city. It's unbelievable to see how much a city gets behind a team. We went 0-16 one year, and every game was still sold out. So, I'm back on the bandwagon a bit.
All right. You're back on the bandwagon. So let's talk. I really think you learn a lot about people when you get to meet, like, one of their defining moments. So I'm curious to hear your defining moment, like a moment you had where it was a really tough moment. It could be a moment that was transformational, but it's a moment that you saw that you had to figure out a way forward, or there wasn't, or it was going to be, complete failure, or it wasn't going to be something that you accept. Walk us through what that moment was for you.
Yeah. I feel like I have several, but
okay. What's the first one that comes to mind?
The one that comes to mind for me is COVID. The fact that I was one of the first 65 people in the state of Michigan with COVID, right? Which was super scary.
Not how you want to make history, but go ahead.
Yeah, no, not at all. And it was like the first week of March. And what happened was I ended up becoming very sick, spent a couple of days in the hospital. And from there, I was fortunate to recover, although I had some friends who at the same time caught it that didn't really survive it, which was unfortunate. But after coming out of COVID, it made me look at things a bit differently as it related to our company. And a lot of it was really navigating through how do we continue to operate a company while keeping people safe at the same time. And there's a difference in construction safety when you think about, hey, we want to go home every day, same way they came. But when you think about COVID, we were looking at literally the idea that myself, my father, any of our key employees, any of our staff, period, could tomorrow get sick and not be here. Excuse me. And so with that being said, the defining moment for us was do we continue operating our company as we always have, right? Or do we really look at how we can be transformative and flexible to make sure that we're keeping people safe, but we're putting our people first and foremost. And so from that perspective, it was one of those things where we were one of the first companies to shut down. That was a decision that I made early on. I was actually still in the hospital at that point when I made that call. But not just that, but I would say we were one of the first companies prior to knowing if there would be help from the government or anything else to say, hey, we were going to keep everyone on payroll. We wanted to keep everybody at home safe. And whatever losses we incurred, we were willing to accept that just based on the fact of how close it hit us. And so a defining moment from that perspective was really not necessarily taking what I would say is the easy route, and then also being one of the first to make a decision like that, which is during those times of COVID, was really something that we had never faced. So the fact that we were talking about shutting down a construction company, telling our clients that we were shutting down our job sites, those were not easy conversations.
How'd that go? I mean, it became an easier conversation, I imagine, when the governments followed with that decision, but you made that decision before it was mainstream. How did you walk through a conversation like that with clients? Like, that seems like a hard conversation.
Yeah. So I can joke about it now, but the week leading up to me testing positive, I actually had meetings with, I would say, 70% of my clients.
Oh, damn. They're in person?
In person.
So they all got COVID.
Well, they didn't get COVID, but it was a situation where they were pretty worried. So they started shutting down their offices due to the exposure. So it hit home a bit different for them as well. But it was still a different conversation when you talk about their own offices compared to their dollars, right? So
yeah, exactly.
Right. And so
that's when you really get to see people's principles, not when people, what they say.
Real values.
And real values. Like when you have to actually sacrifice something for real.
Absolutely.
Those are your values, not what you say your values are, but what you're willing to sacrifice shows your values.
Absolutely. So for the most part, it went over well. It was so fluid and so fast moving. By the time some of our clients had an opportunity to even digest it, I mean, we were a couple of days past the conversation and things had progressed even more. So fortunately, it went well. I feel like from that perspective, we definitely saved some lives, most likely. We have about 500 people that work for us on a daily basis.
Wow.
And when you look at our COVID numbers as a company, we're pretty proud that through that hardest time from March through, say, June, July, we were pretty low in terms of positive cases.
Did it make you think about your mortality a little bit more? I know it did for me.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So I have to tell you, Rob.
But finish that point too. After you're done with that, go ahead. You were finished.
Yeah. No. So I have to tell you, I'm 43. I was 40 at the time. Excuse me. And up until that point, I never thought about my own mortality. Right.
Yeah, we usually don't.
Right. And it wasn't until I went to the hospital and I was locked in an isolation room with no human contact whatsoever. I had a nurse come check on me once every 4 to 5 hours. And I was in the hospital for 2.5 days. And it's not until you're in that room by yourself and you really don't know what's going on. People are coming in when they do come in, terribly afraid, that it makes you start to look at things differently and say, wow, like, I mean, this is not only serious, but the fact that you don't have your family to support you, you don't have your friends, you don't have human contact, which by itself goes a long way. Yeah. Really made me think about my own mortality. I mean, those nights those 2 nights I was in the hospital, I mean, I spent all night, both nights praying just, hey, if for some reason I'm not here tomorrow, that hopefully I've done all of the things that I needed to do while I was here to make sure that I was in a good place. So
Yeah.
As a 40-year-old, those are tough thoughts and tough experiences that most times we don't have to face until we get older, right?
Yeah. So did it make you approach anything differently in terms of how you do business or your personal life? Like, to talk about that. Like, how did that make you change in terms of your day-to-day execution practices or just personal living habits?
Yeah. So from a business perspective, I put more of a focus on work-life balance first and foremost, right? Because no matter how much money you make, how much success you have, right? The only thing you leave this earth with is you're leaving people with the memories that you have had with that person or those people. And it made me think that we oftentimes spend so much time worried about work or stressing about things we can't control, and always on this constant chase for achievement and success, which is great. But at the end of the day, the most precious thing you have is your time. You can't sell it. You can't trade it. You can't buy it, right? It's the most precious commodity. And it made me think more about the work-life balance for my employees. Like, I try to do everything possible to make sure that they understand that I support them. If there's events they have with their children or their family that takes away from work, I understand. My whole thing is, hey, you have a job to do. As long as you get it done, I'm okay with that. But
I've never
as you can with your loved ones.
How do you do that? Like, how have you found the balance with work-life balance? Seriously, like, what are practical things you do? I haven't found this balance yet, so I'm asking for somebody that, because you've obviously had success.
For me, man, it's very intentional. It's very intentional. It used to be where I would kind of have a little bit of guilt when I would go on vacations or I would travel or just decompress. My role as CEO and president, I can never just turn it off, right?
Exactly.
Like, I can think back to, I was in the Maldives one time for my 40th, actually. And I was there for 2 weeks, and literally I was answering emails and taking calls in the Maldives, right? But what I've learned to do, though, is really be more intentional on what brings me joy and doing that. And for me, it's traveling, where I feel at this point I can be present with my company. I've done a great job of establishing an executive team that makes sure that from our strategic vision to our daily tasks are executed in a way where it gives me more time that I can still do things that I like to do, but also it allows me to have a pulse on the company still. And post-COVID, right? Like, now we're on Zoom. There's so much you can do and not necessarily be in the office every day and still get your work done and be successful. So for me, the work-life balance has been more just the intentionality of getting up and going, because when I come back, I'm rejuvenated, I'm ready to go. So
do you have any habits that you do that keep you grounded or motivated or streamlined that are really important for you as an executive?
Man, I would say for me, it's the values of my family. My father's story.
So what happened? So let's talk about that.
Yeah,
so you still, at a funeral, I heard this statement, and I repeated it at my sister's funeral, as well as my grandmother's funeral, as well as at my grandmother's funeral. The days are long, but the years are short, and so But so it's very. I think it takes some very intentional work to be present and intentional day in and day out and not let the years go by. What is it that you do to be intentional then with your family to keep those? Do you have any habits that root you in that?
Excuse me. I would say I don't necessarily think I have any habits that root me in to that, more than it is me never forgetting where my family comes from. right?
Right.
And so I say that because my mother is one of 9, my father is one of 10. So I grew up with a ton of aunts.
So you're not married. You're not married.
Cousins. Divorce.
Okay, yeah, that's so you're talking about the infrastructure you come from your family, and you have a strong family background. Got it. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And so my mother comes from.
You have kids?
I have 2 boys.
Okay.
2 boys. Yep. Yeah. And so just coming from a large family like that, we always really were super close.
Right.
But when you think about the story of my grandfather, my father's father, my grandparents migrated from Tupelo, Mississippi during the Jim Crow era to go up to Michigan to have an opportunity to work, right? So my grandfather worked in the factory. My grandparents had middle school to lower high school educations and raised 10 kids off of a factory salary, right?
Wow.
And my father tells the story that they never had much money, but they were rich in love. They were always rich in love, right? And me growing up as the grandchild, I got a chance to see that.
Right.
And so the success that we've had in our business has been amazing. But for myself and my father, we're still 2 guys that grew up in this family that didn't have much. My father's story is no different. My mother and father were high school sweethearts, went to prom together and all that good stuff, went off to school, and my mother got pregnant with me their sophomore year. So my father had to drop out of school and figure out a career and decided he wanted to become a carpenter. And
my father's a laborer, so we have a lot in common.
Yeah. And so basically went through apprenticeship school, became an apprentice, and then he went on to be a
journeyman.
Yep. And a foreman after that. Yep. And after about 8 or 9 years, decided he wanted to create his own company. And
that is such an awesome story. I want to. So part of what I do, I'm also in with the Laborers International Union, and I work. So my father has had a similar experience, and he's now an executive with the Laborers International Union. But what I think is so important about what you said, and so I think a lot of Black businesses, I'm going to say it straight, what we get wrong is I think trying to skip the process.
Absolutely.
There is no shortcut. Like your father, what you just went through, like I know so many people, specifically in construction, right? It's a central problem that I see with Black-owned company. I'm just being straight up, right?
I agree.
Some of us go straight to it. We're like, okay, we just want to get straight to be getting the $10 million contract. And what they do is they shortcut it, letting somebody else be the lead, and they don't build the skill set. They don't build the infrastructure. They don't build the knowledge capability and the business acumen of what it takes to build a business. Right. And then when the contracts go away, as they always do, because they're just going to use you for that, you're right back to where you were. Right. So your father, this is very important, right? He went through and actually got, because we get criticism, like, whether union, non-union, no matter what. Like I believe in union, obviously, but no matter what, you need training. You need to understand what you're doing. And so there's merit in training yourself in the workforce. And people want to jump out without any level of necessary expertise in what they do. This is obviously not the case across the board, but I've seen this abused so much, right? That I just think is worth pointing out that there's no skipping the process. Everybody looks at social media and says that, that people think this stuff is instant, and you're comparing yourself to another person's journey that you probably don't know the details of. Exactly. So I just think it's a really great point.
Yeah. And so what's interesting is he started the first company and then got opportunity, which was the first company that he did was drywall and metal stud. Second company that he got an opportunity to create was a general contracting construction management company. And then after that, he ended up creating a glass and glazing company, and then a carpet and flooring company. And then we acquired our electrical company in 2011. And it was all based on just the opportunities, but to do it the right way, like you said. So he took the risk. He didn't have a minority partner who was bankrolling the operation and really making
and
the
most of the time
calls and the money.
Exactly, because most of the time it's bullshit. And most of the time it is.
Right. It's a front
it's a
most
front.
times, right?
Most of the time it's a front.
Right. And so it's funny when you say you can't cheat the process, right? Because even my own journey, although I didn't have the same journey as my father, I went to college for what I'm doing now. So University of Michigan, Civil and Environmental Engineering.
I'm electrical engineering. That's my degree.
Nice. EECS. All right. Yeah. And so when I was done, though, and I worked for the company, I started entry level, and I literally have held at least 80% of the job roles in our business. And not just that, but when my father felt it was time to train me for leadership, he ended up bringing in a guy who had recently sold his construction company to an international company. And he brought him in as president. It was a 4-year program. From day one, we knew it would be a 4-year program.
Yeah.
He brought him in to train me. And this guy,
awesome.
Jim Cole, had over 40 to 50 years of experience at that point. And so year one, I was a fly on the wall. I was in meetings. Didn't know which way was up. And I was meeting.
Your father and my father would get along.
Yeah. So met his contacts. I was building my own contacts, but I was in meetings just understanding the dynamics of leadership. Year two, started to get a little bit more comfortable understanding certain things. And I am locked in step with them, shoulder to shoulder. We're in meetings together. We're planning together. And by year three, I really was beginning to feel very comfortable, where at that point he would ask me, hey, here's a situation we have. What would you do? What do you want to do? And he would have me answer. And if I was off base, he would walk me through why I was off base. But it helped me get an opportunity to have the cognitive thinking needed for leadership, but have a backstop where it was a free-flowing, comfortable environment for me to learn and do so. And then also, man, it was tough. I mean, it was many nights. I was up to 3, 4 in the morning reviewing 300-page contracts to like put my own notes to and comments, to come back and sit with him that next morning at 8 a.m. to walk him through my comments to see if I was correct, if I was off base, and he would walk me through if it was something I missed or something I looked at differently. But it taught me so much during those 3 years. And then the 4th year was really at a point where he was like, hey, I'm here. I'm a figurehead. You make the calls.
Right.
And if you're wrong, I'm not even going to tell you you're wrong. But I'm not going to let you get too far off base. But if I have to take the heat, I'll take the heat. And so by year, go ahead.
What point in the relationship, because I've had this with my father too, but what point in the relationship maybe the dynamic change? Because obviously he's a mentor, mentee, father figure, but then it comes a point where you also, I'm sure, bring different ideas, different concepts. Where you can push back on things that are. Like
I'm going to get to that.
Tell me how that dynamic. So it's not there yet. You're still not there.
Not there yet. No. So year 4 was at the point where I was.
So you're not there. You guys are still on. Okay.
Yeah. So year 4, we're still I'm still training, making decisions for the company under the guise of my mentor who was brought in to train me. Right. And so by the end of year 4, I was like, okay, I'm charged up, ready to go. Let's do this. And so when it was time to make the transition, when my mentor retired and I assumed the position at the time of president, it wasn't like I had a deer in headlights feeling. I was like, all right, I know what I want to do. I have a plan. And then my first year, I saved our company almost $650,000 by just renegotiating some of our contracts with a few of our employees that were just bad contracts, right? And it gave the employees more money to take home, but it saved us money on our side as well. And so then that led into the transition from me being the understudy to now the leader, now having to interface directly with my father as the leader of the company, right?
Right.
And what I love about my father is that he's never been a guy that's been overbearing. Oftentimes, when you think about those transitions from G1 to G2,
it's tough.
Extremely tough, right?
It's tough, man.
The best thing that happened to me was my father going out to hire someone to train me, so we could maintain our father-son relationship, which is amazing. Exactly. But then it allowed me to do all of the stuff that I needed to do behind the curtain. So when I was in this role, he could respect me differently and not look at me just as a son, but know that I was ready for the task at hand. And so as we progressed through that, it was very soon thereafter that I started challenging some of the status quo processes or things that the company had.
But that's different. What happened there? Like, was there had to be some challenge there because people who are, are used to a certain way. And how did that work out? Like, how did you go through that tension?
To my father's credit, it was, excuse me, it was very easy, actually. Okay. So I remember vividly.
He did a good job. I guess it's that you kind of answered the question because that 4 year in between kind of helped provide some buffer versus it being like an immediate thing and kind of like a culture shock. Your father properly so, and you also properly took the instruction because you could have just said like, I'm ready to go. But I really respect the fact that the generational wealth building and the building and keeping that legacy, part of what we also should not be ashamed of as Black people is our story is not a poverty story. That's not like,
right.
I feel as if sometimes we are shamed in certain rooms if we've had any success or any opportunities handed or I guess provided by our father and our parents. And my thing is like, that's the point.
Yeah.
Like that's what we are aiming for, literally.
So it is the point. It is what most cultures do.
Yes.
Right?
Only we shame each other for it. This is what I'm getting at. Like
And I think for me, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've been unapologetic about that.
Should be.
Right?
I've gotten that way too. I'm like, I tell people, did my father help me? Yes. Did he do everything? No. But the point of a parent is literally the only job, I think, is to make sure your kids start from a better place than you did and have more knowledge than you did. That's it.
Absolutely.
That's the job.
And what I say with that, Rob, is, and I just had this conversation last week. It's great to have the opportunity, right? So what my father did for me, what I'm doing for my kids is providing that opportunity. But once you get that opportunity, it still requires hard work. Hard work. To be able to be successful, right? I mean, it is hard.
It's like, really hard too.
And so
I think people think because you had an opportunity, that makes it easy. That's not true.
Most times it makes it harder, right? Because I can tell you growing up through the company as I was rising in my career, I was always looked at differently than the rest of the employees because they were waiting on me to mess up or they were waiting on me to not work as hard. And so I always had to be twice as good, work twice as hard, just so I was never viewed as, hey, this is just the son of the owner.
And kudos to your father for also instilling that in you because, you could have viewed it from an entitlement point of view. You could have, that's not an uncommon thing for anybody to do. So and the harder part is going to be for your kids to get that because the third generation.
That's the tough one.
That's the tough part because they've never had
that. That is the tough one.
Yeah, because like we sound like we come from similar places. Like I didn't grow up rich, but I wasn't poor, right? We were middle class. Mm-hmm. And then my parents started doing a little better later in life. Mm-hmm. But kids that have always had generally like, it's a little bit different, right? Because it's actually harder, more challenging to raise your kids if you have, it's really hard if you don't have enough resources. That's true. But if you have a little more than most, then it becomes challenging to keep your kids' expectations from not being entitled. Like I can just tell you what I struggle with. So for me growing up, that truly was the best part of like my like childhood was that I got a chance to see
two sides to life, basically, right?
Yeah.
And I say that because we grew up very much, I would say, lower middle class. As my father was starting the business, it was oftentimes that he wouldn't take paychecks, right?
That's how it works, especially when you start off.
Yeah.
I got a tech startup. Believe me, that's how it's still working.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And then by I would say around the time I was seventh grade, my parents wanted to put me into private school, which was the best thing that happened for me. But I remember being that kid, I would get notices sent home that if my tuition wasn't paid in 2 weeks or a week, I couldn't come back to school, right? So I saw that side of it. It wasn't until high school that
you had that David Chappelle life.
Yeah.
You don't feel any different until you go around people that actually have money. You're like,
right. Yeah. And so high school, junior high school, private school, I had my friends from the neighborhood where I lived. But then I had my friends from school who were living in the suburbs, and I would go to their house and they had indoor gyms and indoor pools in their house. This is back in the 90s, right? Early 90s. But then I would come back to the neighborhood and we would try to figure out how to scrum up $5 to go get some juice and cookies, right? And so I got a chance to see both sides. But what it did for me was that it normalized the fact that it's okay to have nice things. It's okay to strive for that. So it gave me the sense of drive that, hey, I want to not only take the opportunity that I have, but I want to grow that. But also with that, there's things that I like, that I know, that I've seen, that I want to accomplish. And that's been one of the biggest drivers for me is I don't like to lose. I love to win. I like to prove people wrong.
Yeah.
And ultimately, everything that I'm doing is for the betterment of our family as a whole. So my parents, my sister, my kids, my future grandkids at some point, et cetera. But also at the same time, bettering the lives of people around me too, where it's no fun if you're the one winning and you look and everyone else is losing. But how can I take the opportunity that I've been provided to pull people up with me in various ways, which is what we've done through our core business, through our giving, scholarships, list goes on, but it's just a core value and principle.
All right, I want to get to some rapid fire questions as we get ready to conclude.
Go ahead.
What's your most important accomplishment or highlight from both personally, we'll say, but also for the business with Brinker? What is it?
Yeah. Personally, I would say it's just, raising my two boys, and being there for them. Although I'm busy, to carve out that time, that I still make time to make sure that I'm at their sports games, their events for school, et cetera. So it's just being a good father, first and foremost. Professionally, I would say the biggest accomplishment has really been just the fact of being able to establish my own name, recognition, and respect in the market after my father. Right.
All right. What advice would you give your younger self, and what advice would you ignore?
Advice to give my younger self: be patient. Be patient.
What advice would you ignore?
Ignore. That's a good one. It's okay to disrupt.
All right. That's a good choice. All right. How about what's an important truth you have that very few people agree with you on?
Wow. Man. I can tell you an important truth that I have that I've been amplifying over the last year, and I'm going to continue to amplify. I can't necessarily say people disagree with me on it, but it's the fact that one of my goals at this point is really to help people become comfortable with the uncomfortable conversations. And I say that because when you think about what we face as as Black people, oftentimes the conversations aren't had as it relates to the history from slavery to Jim Crow to segregation and drug laws and all of the stuff that comes with it, of just all of the stuff that has kind of been put in motion to put us in a place that we've been in, that we are always playing catch up, right? And I feel that if people are more comfortable having those uncomfortable conversations, it will allow us to have empathy for each other in different ways that then helps to unite us as a people, right?
Right.
Look at how divisive things are right now. Oftentimes it's because people don't understand the history or where we come from or what we've done or what that person has gone through. And as a result, you live in this world of like just what you know, but you don't really have an opportunity to understand the next person.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Final question. Your motto, a logo that says who you are, summarizes what you believe. What would that motto be and why?
Oh, man, that's a great question.
Thank you.
I would say integrity, respect, faith, and love.
All right. Larry Brinker, good to have you on, man.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure, Rob, and I wish you the best with what you have going and with your podcast. And thank you for the opportunity to be a part of it today.